What's up, everyone? So today I'm taking apart a Nintendo GameCube so I can mod it. So on the bottom there's 4 screws. You need a Gamebit screwdriver to take these screws out. Then right here I just flip them over to get the screws out. So these screws right here are all, I think, about 20 millimeters. Yeah. There's the head. If I can get it to focus, it requires a Gamebit driver. I forget what size. And then the top just slides off. This particular GameCube's pretty dusty inside, pretty gross. Now this controller port just kind of tilts forward. There's little clips on the edges that pop out, and then you can just disconnect that ribbon cable and set it to the side. And same with the bag. The bag just kind of slides off. So right here I'm going to disconnect the power supply and the fan from this little Daughterboard. And there's one screw holding that board down. It's just a tiny Phillips. About 8.5 millimeters. Trying to get the camera to focus, but it's not focusing. It's okay. I'm getting a bigger screwdriver. Now I'm going to go around the perimeter of the disk drive, and there's about 12 Phillips screws. They're all the same length, and I'm going to take all those out. That was kind of hard to see, but if you just look around, you'll see them all. About 11.5 millimeters. So with just those 2 screws out, you could take the fan off. And now I'm going to take off the lid switch Daughterboard, which just has one little screw on it. .7 millimeters. look underneath that lid switch Daughterboard, there's a couple screws, and it's easier to get to those screws after you remove that Daughterboard. Right here I'm taking off they're like ground contacts for the controller port. These screws are pretty unique because they're really thin and long. About 21 millimeters. Unplug that board. There's just a little connector going to it. Now I'm going to finish taking out the rest of those 12 screws that line the perimeter of the DVD drive. I'll be posting a video soon of me modding this particular GameCube. I'm gonna install a Pico boot mod, so it boots straight to Swiss, where you could play backup games or emulators. Yeah, just showing that all those screws are the same size, so it should be pretty easy to keep them organized. But some of them are in there pretty tight, so you gotta use the right size Phillips screwdriver and make sure you don't strip the head of the screw. That's why I'm using this bigger screwdriver for this part. After I disassemble this, I'm gonna clean it up with some dish soap and a toothbrush and let it dry before I mod it, because this is for a customer. So with all those out, the disk drive will lift straight up. The disk drive's connected to that metal plate, RFID shield or whatever, with or RF shield rather, sorry. It's connected with, what is that, 3, 4, 6 screws. I'm going to just set that to the side though. I'll take it apart later. And now you're down to the motherboard. So there's the big heatsink. The heatsink has 6 screws in it. It's not required to take these screws out before the motherboard comes out. I could pull the motherboard out right now, but I'm going to take these screws out first, just so. These screws are pretty easy to identify because there's a little washer around the screw. It's 10 millimeters. And there's 6 of them, they're all the same size. Here, if you just push up on the motherboard, it'll come out. It's got a connector on the bottom that's connected to the power supply, so it might be a little, you might feel a little resistance trying to pull it up, but it'll come out. Now taking off this RF shield, there's 3 or 4 screws. It's like 11 and a half millimeters. I believe they're the same screws as the 12 that are lining the DVD drive. And that shield comes out. There's the power supply. There's these little metal screw holders that just fall out. I take them out because if you flip that over, they're just going to fall out and get lost, so I take them out just to... These screws for the power supply are 7 millimeters. There's 4 of them, 1 on each corner. I know you can't really see me take it out, but and then it comes out just like that. These little metal pieces just come out. This one got caught on a little piece of plastic, but then I'm going to take these covers off just so when I clean it I can get in there nice and deep. Now I'll take the disk drive almost completely apart. These screws are pretty small, what, 7 millimeters? RF shield comes off, and now you got some connectors. You got the wood switch cable, that's the blue one. This ribbon cable, just got to push the sides up to release the cable, and it comes right out. Got the ribbon cable there close to my hand that goes to the disk drive, but it's friction fit into the connector, and I didn't really want to. There's not a good spot to get my finger in to pull it out, so I'm trying to take the disk drive motherboard out so I could take that cable out safely. As you can see, those screws are pretty identifiable by their washer, about 7 millimeters in size. So there's 4 of these screws, all the same length. Now I'm going to try to wiggle this motherboard out of the RF shield. Disconnect this wire. There's a big long plastic rod there close to my thumb, and that's what's holding it up. But I was seeing if I could just get it up high enough to go past the rod, but I realized that that's not going to happen, so I'm just going to slide my tweezers underneath that cable and gently pull out on it. Now these motor wires are soldered to the motherboard, so you can't disconnect those unless you use a soldering iron, but it's not necessary. I'm trying to separate the disk drive from the RF shield, but it won't come apart. I'm not sure if it's glued. I don't see any clips holding it on. But to get to the laser and the motor, there's these, I think there's 3 or 4 plastic clips you could push down on. It's kind of tricky because it's a really tight fit, so I'm just trying to push them down and push the plastic part up through the hole to unlatch it. So there, I got one. There's the second one. And after you get those 2, it'll just come apart. And that's pretty much it. You got the laser assembly, the motor, the gears,